Have you ever stopped to think about the hidden forces shaping your work life? Or even bigger things like humanity's challenges?
Yeah, like everything from, say, your personal finances all the way up to global conflict.
Exactly. It feels like there's often something deeper going on than just, the economics of it all.
Hmm.
So today we're doing a deep dive into that very idea. We're looking at business not just through an economic lens, but as this profound interplay of what our sources are calling the human science of business and the art of business.
That's right. And our mission here is really to pull out the key insights from the materials you sent over. We'll be connecting dots between fields like, well, biology, psychology, even philosophy.
To get at some surprising truths, right, about things like financial independence, ethics, sustainability.
Precisely. And central to all of this, we'll see how really universal human things, especially scarcity, influence pretty much everything we do.
So consider this your shortcut to getting, well, truly informed. We're aiming for those real aha moments, practical understanding, all delivered clearly.
Yeah, hopefully some engaging stuff.
I'm definitely curious to see the connections we uncover. Okay, let's unpack this first part.
So, thinking about business.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to just default to transactions, profit, loss, that kind of thing.
Sure, the standard view.
But these sources really push for a broader perspective. They argue it's fundamentally a human thing, driven by our needs, our wants, our interactions. It's shaped by, well, us.
I like that framing. It feels more complete. And that leads us into this idea of the human science of business.
Right.
Our sources describe it not just as theory, but as an analytical framework, a rigorous way to integrate knowledge from all sorts of fields.
Yeah, social sciences, humanities.
Yeah.
Even natural sciences like evolutionary biology, biochemistry, neuroscience.
So thinking about how our, ancient biological wiring might still pop up in a modern boardroom decision.
Exactly. Or why some marketing campaigns just connect with us on a gut level. Neuroscience might explain that. It's about understanding our own programming, really. And its main purpose is understanding human abilities, our limits, our behaviors, so we can then design better systems and tools.
Making things safer, more intuitive, more effective.
Yeah. And this is where it gets interesting. Human-centered design, HCD. It's not just for product development anymore.
Right. It's broader.
Think about applying it to, say, how your company runs meetings. Maybe designing them with more empathy for people's attention spans could actually boost productivity.
Yeah.
It's a core principle for all operations.
Empathy, iterative design.
Okay, I see.
So if that's the science side.
Then the art of business is the other side of the coin. The creative, intuitive, relational part.
And the sources say it's just as important for profitability as the conventional economic stuff.
Equally important, yeah. It's about a shift in perspective. Seeing your work, whatever it is, as a kind of work of art, and your customers or clients as your audience.
Bringing passion into it.
Exactly. It creates this duality of perspectives, holding both the artistic vision and the economic reality in mind at the same time. Gives you much more depth. Think about the inputs. Imagination, emotion, intelligence, experience, and the outputs. Things like beauty, excitement, enjoyment, real meaning for customers.
So it's not just about utility, is it? It's about enriching the whole value proposition.
Precisely, which enhances performance and, yes, profitability.
Okay, so this dual approach, science and art, it definitely challenges the old view, doesn't it?
It does. Historically, business was pretty much laser focused on economic flow, maximizing shareholder wealth. That was the game.
But these sources talk about a growing shift, a push for a broader purpose.
Absolutely. You hear thinkers like Simon Sinek saying things like, profit isn't a purpose, it's a result.
Right. To have a purpose means the things we do are of real value to others. I like that quote.
It captures it well, and this shift isn't just, a nice idea. It's becoming a strategic imperative.
But, let's be real. Quarterly earnings still drive a lot of decisions. How much are companies really embracing this broader purpose versus just, say, good PR?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the sources suggest it's becoming more than just slogans.
How so?
It shows up in concrete ways,
Oh.
like empowering consumers with transparency, building genuinely sustainable supply chains, investing seriously in developing employees.
Okay.
And it has a huge impact on attracting talent. Some sources even suggest that a strong CSR commitment is becoming the single biggest draw for top performers, especially younger ones. They value that purpose.
Interesting. More than just pay, sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. It also builds customer loyalty, strengthens relationships with suppliers, and lets the business make a real contribution. This is where that triple bottom line idea comes in.
People, planet, prosperity, moving beyond just shareholders to all stakeholders.
Exactly.
And the direct business benefits of CSR, corporate social responsibility, they seem pretty clear from the sources. Enhanced reputation, brand value, customer loyalty, better employee engagement.
Lower turnover, more innovation, sustainability built in, even better risk mitigation.
It really shows that purpose and ethics aren't soft things anymore. They're hard business strategies impacting the bottom line.
Definitely.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. What about the people in business? What makes someone successful?
Well, it's clear it takes more than just technical skill or financial know-how. That's necessary, but not sufficient.
Right.
The sources point to things like strong people skills, being a really effective communicator, written, and verbal discipline, definitely.
And a willingness to keep learning, right. Creativity, too, for new ideas, new strategies.
Absolutely. And resilience.
Yeah.
You need to be able to bounce back from setbacks because they will happen.
It's fascinating, the point about intrinsic motivation being a stronger predictor for entrepreneurs than just money.
Yeah, that genuine interest, wanting autonomy, the sheer challenge of building something, self-realization, those seem to be the real drivers.
So those things we used to call soft skills.
They're becoming core competencies now. They drive innovation, adaptability, leadership.
Which implies business education needs to catch up, maybe. Focus more on these human-centric skills.
Seems that way. Fostering environments where people feel they have freedom, meaningful work, creative expression. That's apparently key for innovation, dynamism, persistence, and even well-being.
Okay, let's pivot to something many people are thinking about. Financial independence.
Right. Usually defined as having enough wealth, often through passive income, to live how you want without needing active employment.
But the sources mention a lot of uncertainty, even pessimism about achieving it, especially for younger generations.
Yeah, there seems to be a disconnect. And psychosocial factors play a role. Things like financial satisfaction or feelings of hopelessness, even religiosity, correlate with achieving financial autonomy.
And there's that learned helplessness loop you mentioned.
Right. If you don't have good financial literacy, the goals can seem impossible. So why bother learning more? Becomes a negative cycle.
A self-fulfilling prophecy, almost.
Kind of, yeah.
So why is it often harder for employees to reach financial independence compared to, say, entrepreneurs?
There are some pretty significant systemic barriers discussed in the sources.
Like what?
Well, wages often lagging behind living costs, for one. Huge student debt burdens. The average is over $37,000, apparently. High costs for basics like housing, transport.
And crucially, employees have capped income, right? Plus, inflation and taxes chip away at it constantly.
Exactly, and often limited access to things like flexible emergency savings accounts or even basic banking services for some.
And then the psychological side.
Yeah, a widespread lack of financial literacy. Not enough guidance on debt management, saving early for retirement, understanding compound interest.
That compound interest point is huge. It's hard to grasp the long-term impact if no one explains it well.
It really is. And that feeling of hopelessness can just kill any motivation to plan financially.
So if we contrast that with the entrepreneurial mindset,
It's a very different picture. Key drivers there are things like autonomy, control being your own boss.
a fundamental desire for many people.
Often a deep passion for the work itself, and that drive to bring new ideas into the world.
And practically speaking, it offers more flexibility, potentially, control over your schedule.
Right. And, critically, unlimited income potential. Your earnings aren't capped by a salary structure. Growth builds assets, which can generate passive income. That's the cornerstone of financial freedom.
Psychologically, too, entrepreneurship seems to hit some core human needs: autonomy, mastery, purpose.
Yeah, the sources suggest it leads to greater happiness, self-efficacy. These aren't just side benefits, they're core drivers of the behavior.
The comparison table in the source material really lays it out starkly, doesn't it?
It does. Employee, income limited, capped, entrepreneur, unlimited potential.
Employee, stability usually. Entrepreneur, instability, risk.
Employee, lower risk, lower responsibility.
Oh.
Entrepreneurs, high risk, high responsibility.
Autonomy, low for employees, high for entrepreneurs.
Wealth building, a struggle for employees with inflation and taxes.
Entrepreneurs.
Building assets, passive income potential.
And motivation, often extrinsic for employees versus intrinsic for entrepreneurs. Autonomy, passion, self-realization.
Yeah, it paints a clear picture of why the traditional employee path often has more limitations when it comes to achieving that financial freedom goal.
Okay, let's zoom out again to something really fundamental. Scarcity and competition.
Yes. The core economic problem, traditionally. Infinite human wants versus finite resources.
But the source's stress, it's much bigger than just economics, right? It impacts everything across all cultures, ages, genders.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And psychologically, it creates fascinating effects, like the scarcity effect, this cognitive bias where we just value things more if we think they're limited or rare.
Makes us feel urgent, exclusive.
Yeah, and can lead to pretty irrational decisions sometimes.
It connects to that idea of loss aversion, doesn't it? Feeling the pain of losing something more intensely than the pleasure of gaining it.
Exactly. Losing $50 feels worse than finding $50 feels good for most people. Our brains are wired that way. Evolutionarily, it makes sense.
So?
Our ancestors needed vigilance, maybe fear, even hoarding tendencies to survive when resources were genuinely scarce. It's survival instinct.
And the amygdala, the brain's fear center, lights up more for potential losses.
Right. This whole complex is sometimes called the scarcity brain. It's like an ingrained evolutionary default setting in our cognition.
And modern industries have gotten very good at tapping into that, haven't they?
Oh, definitely. Sometimes leading to maladaptive behaviors, addiction, overconsumption.
It also shaped group dynamics, according to the sources.
Yeah, interestingly, competition between groups for scarce resources seems to have paradoxically spurred ultra-sociality.
Meaning?
Like groups learning to cooperate on larger scales, forming bigger communities, cities. But it also fueled ethnocentrism.
That us versus them mentality.
Exactly, leading to conflict over those resources.
Wow. So scarcity has literally shaped our societies and even potentially our biology through things like population bottlenecks.
Yeah, the sources mention historical events, famines, diseases, violence that drastically reduced populations and genetic diversity, potentially making later generations less adaptable. Think the Toba catastrophe theory or other ancient bottlenecks.
But scarcity also drove adaptation, genetic diversification.
It's a powerful selective force, yes, which connects to the idea that maintaining ecological balance, avoiding extreme scarcity, is actually crucial for our own species' adaptability and survival.
Philosophically, how is scarcity viewed?
Often framed as this inescapable struggle, like Starcher did. There's a debate. Is need inherent, or is scarcity something we create through our social systems, our modes of production?
And does that external scarcity become internalized, embedding fear, aggression deep within us?
That's a key question. Explore this idea of internalized scarcity, shaping our experience of the world, impacting freedom and peace.
Psychologically, we mentioned urgency, FOMO.
Fear of missing out, yeah. It triggers impulsive decisions, bypasses logic. It also leads to tunneling. Our focus narrows dramatically and increases cognitive load, making us less effective thinkers overall.
And marketing exploits this constantly. Limited time offers, only 3 left.
Absolutely. It's an ethical tightrope for businesses, though. Artificial scarcity can really backfire and destroy trust if people feel manipulated.
Economically, scarcity is still the foundation, right? Driving supply, demand, price.
It's the fundamental constraint. There's even an entropy theory of value mentioned, linking economic value mathematically to physical scarcity, almost like a law of physics.
But economic systems based on intense competition can actually reinforce that scarcity brain?
Paradoxically, yes. Rewarding zero-sum thinking, incentivizing artificial scarcity. It can feed into those cycles of addiction and overconsumption.
What about logic and math? Can they help?
Game theory offers powerful tools, analyzing strategic interactions, finding optimal ways to allocate resources under scarcity think auction design, finding Pareto-efficient outcomes where no one can be made better off without making someone else worse off.
Sounds complex.
It can be. There are even advanced applications like quantum game theory being explored for really complex resource problems.
And societally, scarcity seems to lead down 2 paths historically.
Yeah, the debate is, does it inevitably cause famine, conflict, migration, or does it spur innovation, ingenuity, technological leaps? Probably both at different times.
And today, climate change is a massive scarcity multiplier, isn't it?
Huge, exacerbating shortages of water, land, resources, fueling tensions, driving migration. And the consequences are undeniably global. It demands cooperation, not just competition.
Which brings us squarely to the ethical dimension.
Scarcity forces incredibly tough ethical choices, resource allocation in healthcare, disaster relief. Who gets what when there isn't enough?
You need ethical frameworks, autonomy, beneficence, justice especially, to protect vulnerable people.
Absolutely. And that scarcity brain we keep talking about, it pushes us towards self-interest, which can lead to ethically dubious actions.
Like exploiting biases, creating artificial scarcity for profit.
Right. And while ethics is personal, the workplace environment heavily influences choices. Businesses are described as ethically challenged communities that need active management to foster integrity.
It's constant effort.
Always. And cultural conflict gets amplified in a globalized world.
Yeah.
Different values, language barriers, stereotypes, all potential flashpoints.
Often linked back to that us versus them mentality, fueled by resource competition.
Yes, escalating into xenophobia, fear, or hatred of outsiders. History has horrific examples, fueled by insecurity and negative portrayals.
But rule breaking isn't always bad, is it? The sources mention a nuance there.
Right. While it can be destructive, sometimes breaking norms is psychologically necessary for growth, for challenging assumptions, for innovation. It's complex.
So, given all this complexity, how do we aim for a more balanced approach in business and society?
It starts, according to the sources, with how we choose leaders, cultivating a culture that values the right qualities.
Like justice, wisdom, integrity, fairness, strategic vision.
Exactly. Because leaders shape policies and direction. Democratic leadership styles are highlighted, distributing power, valuing diverse opinions, fostering skills like critical thinking.
And leaders need to navigate that tension between stability and change, right?
Right.
And crucially, steer us towards cooperation, that ultra-sociality.
And away from ethnocentric conflict, especially when facing global scarcity challenges.
And where does the human science of business fit into creating this balance?
It provides the tools. Understanding human behavior, cultural differences, that's essential for fostering a healthy, prosperous society.
It connects directly to things like CSR and sustainability governance.
Yes. Balancing economic development with environmental protection, social responsibility. Think sustainable resource management, cutting waste, energy efficiency, renewables.
It's about guiding society away from that scarcity mindset towards sufficiency, using resources responsibly, not excessively.
Exactly. Promoting optimal allocation, responsible consumption. The goal is intergenerational equity, meeting our needs without wrecking things for future generation.
A fundamental shift.
It is, and thinking even bigger about humanity's role in the cosmos.
We have this unique awareness, tool-making ability, but also the capacity for self-destruction, like with nuclear weapons.
A real double-edged sword. But some philosophies, ancient and modern, talk about an inherent balance in the universe, a natural tendency towards equilibrium.
And the idea of an ecological civilization.
Yeah, uniting our physical, emotional, intellectual selves. Unifying individual, community, and cosmic life based on a natural law of caring, sharing responsibility for all life.
So we need to shift from an adversarial us versus them consciousness
Towards inclusivity, responsibility. Aligning with a life instinct, stewarding the planet for the long haul.
a huge undertaking. How can things like AI help us get there? What are the concrete strategies?
Okay, so to tackle the scarcity mindset itself, first, widespread financial literacy, especially for younger people.
Covering debt, retirement savings, compound interest.
Yes, and really showing the impact.
Yeah.
Like that example, invest $5,000 a year at 7%. For 40 years, you get over $1 million. Wait, just 10 years to start, you end up with roughly half that.
Yeah.
Over $500,000 less. Time is critical.
Wow, that's stark.
Then systemic support. Wages matching living costs, student debt relief, accessible emergency savings. Reduce those constant scarcity cues.
And promoting abundance or sufficiency thinking?
Yeah, shifting away from fear-based consumption towards contentment. Mindfulness practices can help interrupt that default scarcity wiring.
Okay, what about fostering ethical business and cultural harmony?
Integrate human-centered design everywhere. HR, customer service, design systems that respect dignity inherently.
Makes sense.
And mandatory cultural competence training, dialogue platforms, reduce fear of the unknown, break stereotypes, build empathy to combat xenophobia.
And incentivize purpose-driven businesses.
Yes. Governments and markets rewarding companies that align profit with societal well-being and sustainability. Leverage those talent and loyalty benefits we talked about.
And for resource management and global stewardship.
Adopt circular economy principles aggressively. Reduce waste, reuse, recycle, recover resources. Remember the aluminum example. Recycling uses 95% less energy than making it from scratch. Huge savings, lower footprint.
Tangible benefits.
Establish clear ethical frameworks for distributing scarce resources fairly, nationally, and globally. Prioritize the vulnerable to reduce conflict.
And finally, leadership again.
Elect leaders focused on justice, wisdom, collective well-being. Leaders who can champion that ultra-sociality, drive international cooperation on shared issues like climate change.
Okay. So, wrapping up this deep dive, the big takeaway seems to be that business isn't just numbers.
Not at all. It's deeply human, woven into our biology, psychology, society, philosophy.
And profoundly shaped by scarcity.
Absolutely. Which means integrating that human science with the art of business isn't just nice. It's essential for navigating complexity.
The ultimate challenge, then, is maybe evolving beyond those primal scarcity reactions.
It seems so. Moving past zero-sum thinking towards cooperation, equity, ingenuity, making sure economic activity serves well-being, individual, community, planetary, finding that harmonious existence.
A lot to think about. So maybe the question for you, the listener, is knowing all this, what personal choices, what perspectives might you adopt, seeing how deeply connected our human nature, our economies, and our planet really are? That's all for this deep dive.
This is DigitView.